Peace, family. Peace, family. This is Ikemba here with Tyranny Cherie. And Frank will be joining us soon. Welcome back. Here's Frank. So I'm Ikemba of the Public Relations Committee.
Sorry, my baby just spilled some stuff. But hey, everyone, Tyranny Cherie, Steering Committee Chair of Church Colonialism.
Hey guys, I'm Frank Malbad, chair for the Political Action Committee with Charge Colonialism. My camera is kind of off. I don't know what is going on here.
Indeed. I was about to introduce everyone. You know, that week off. You know,
Feel forever, right?
yeah. Indeed. And you know, and Frank is blacking out, you know, today in commemoration of you know, what happened on Juneteenth. So he's blacking out till we get reparations. So he's going to be doing that. Nah, I'm joking, everybody. Frank's having some camera problems, but he's here with us. Speaking of Juneteenth, though, like, how was everyone's Juneteenth? We had the day off.
Mine was nice. I mean, yeah, I had Monday off, so it was cool. I mean, I didn't like get caught up in what was happening with everyone else, because I think a lot of our people are so thirsty for white affirmation that they're like, oh, now that the white man has given us this holiday, you know, let's make sure it's a time where we're going to market ourselves as being, you know, people who are worth, you know, their love, you know how people do. So I try not to I tried to shut off like the world around and just, you know, focus on family. Obviously with COVID going on, and I'm talking about Delta, double, triple, whatever. I didn't feel like going out. So yeah, that was my day. How about y'all's? I know y'all actually did go out, right?
Yeah, I was a part of some events. A group of us organized the event. I organized with this group, Abundance in Ujamaa in New York, and we do a lot of cultural events and push economic independence. And so we had a Juneteenth event. But you know, I'm trying to get used to people saying Happy Juneteenth though. Like I can't say it. I say remember Juneteenth. That's what I say. I say remember Juneteenth. But I don't know. What about you, Fred?
I mean, I didn't really do much. I just, you know, stay home that day and did some reading and stuff. That was all basically I did. I didn't really go out that day.
Well, I definitely don't. We'll be looking to see how many of the people who celebrated Juneteenth will then go and celebrate 4th of July. Because to me, that kind of defeats the point, but we'll see what happens.
Absolutely. I want to appreciate everybody for you know, for tuning in. We were off last week, of course, but we're back, and today we're going to be reading, of course, from the Black radical tradition. We're getting close to finishing up this study, but today we're going to be looking at section or chapter 13A, Black Women's Manifesto, Double Jeopardy to be Black and Female. This is by Francis M. Bill. It was written in 1969. So page 421 for all of those people who want to get in place. You can go to page 421. So before we get into our study, though, we're going to do our weekly roundup. Some always interesting things happening in the news. Frank, what are you bringing us?
Yeah, what is in the news right now is very saddening. And so there's a company, a US-based company, two different companies. One is in Virginia, and the company is called Nestle, that produce milk, so all the milk and the milk powder and thing you see here, the Nestle. So, and then there's another company called the Cargill, which is based in Minnesota. So two US-based companies. They are found in Africa doing child slavery, both in Ghana and Ivory Coast. And this has been going on quite for a very long time. And there are 26 citizens from Mali that try to sue these two companies. And the description of the child slavery of what is going on in that is very sad. According to the report, it says that these children are being beaten and slapped, on the floor in a very small room and those things. And according to a report in 2018 from the child labor report, it says that about 2.1 million children are working both in Ivory Coast and in Ghana on these cocoa plantation. So, and the report came out, and there was a lawsuit against these two companies. And again, America, always acting as the police or always acting as the human rights advocate, says that these two companies cannot be sued by foreigner. And the report is very sad. They're calling these people, how can a foreigner, sue an American-based company? And they didn't deny the fact that there's a child slavery going on in Africa by these two American companies. They didn't deny it. What they deny here is the child slavery did not take place in the US. It's taking place in Africa. So they didn't deny it. But the issue here is these two companies are registered in the US. These two companies are paying taxes to the US. These two companies are doing everything, and the taxes they pay the taxes they pay, they're not paying it to the African leaders, or they're not paying it in Africa or in Ghana. It is coming to the American government. So there's a need that the American government should sit there and protect these people. So again, this is how these people sat down and said slavery was legal. You get to me? Slavery was legal. Colonialism was legal. So they didn't see it as anything. So in the same way, as long as the United States government is getting her share of what they call taxes, they don't see it as anything. They will protect any company from here. So the court in the United States, he's called Clarence Thomas. He is the associate justice. He sat down there and back this whole issue as these people, they are foreigner, they cannot be sued. And what they did here was they used an old court system, a law is called the Alien Tort Act. They used that not to charge these two companies. And the Alien Tort Act, when you look at it again, these are colonial policies. These are colonial act that was put in place to protect a foreign company, to protect white company into Africa and into other war country they call third war. So they put in these policies to protect them in case as any time people want to go against them. So they use the Alien Tort Act, and it is one of the oldest act, federal act in the book that is still keeping. So the question again here is, how can the United States pass a Juneteenth if indeed they really know the meaning of Juneteenth? Because Juneteenth is not just a pay holiday. If indeed you know the meaning of Juneteenth, why should you sit down there and back such an act and then bring in an act you call the Alien Tort Act just to let go these companies that are exploiting, that are doing child slavery in Africa, and you agree to it? But your point here is it did not take place in the US. So that is what happening.
Yeah, trying to get off mute, but yeah, thank you for bringing that to light. This is again, I think, a good example of just how Europe or these white states protect their interests. If you look at the story that we talked about, I think a few weeks back, I brought up Petra Diamonds and how Petra Diamonds, this company based in New Jersey, how the security forces in the diamond mines in Tanzania, they were abusing the people in this impoverished community that's around this billion-dollar industry, or diamond mines, or diamond mines that's producing billions of dollars for this company. These people were being brutalized by these security forces, in some instances killed, murdered, mutilated. And they recently won a settlement. They took it to the court of the British High Court, and they won a settlement of over $6 million for the people who were victims of this atrocity. So in this case, though, the U.S. is trying to separate themselves from what's taking place in the Ivory Coast, right? With the child labor. But we have to understand, though, we have to understand the history of colonialism and how colonialism is still taking place. The exploitation of these workers, where they're being forced to, they're forced into conditions where, you know, the children have to work, men, women, and children. But, you know, in a lot of cases, you have child labor. But as a means, you have to think of, you have an impoverished people, people who are a group of people who are underdeveloped, being underpaid, their work is being undervalued, and have to take extreme measures in order to survive. And so this is an instance of the workers fighting back against the colonial powers for a fair deal. I think the governments of Africa as well have to get involved in this. If the United States is not going to, and we don't expect them to own up to the exploitation and oppression that's taking place in Africa. But this is an opportunity for the governments and if not the governments, at least the workers, to unite, because they understand the contradiction that exists. And so and that's why they're fighting in the courts. But it's up for them to unite against these atrocities and demand amends or recompense for what's taking place.
Sorry, feeding my baby. You know, we're learning more and more that all of the corporations are really backed by the governments. And I think that when you look at how the laws are set up, from the United Nations to the Supreme Court, they very much have protections against corporations. Essentially, they're able to do certain things without having been brought into court. Even like the United Nations is very interesting. They have all these human rights laws, but they refuse to create a human rights instrument that would hold corporations accountable. But they do have ones that can hold governments accountable. But I think that when you learn about neocolonialism and imperialism, how it evolved over time, what you learn is that they're comfortable with having that because the governments essentially can hide behind the corporations. And I think that's what's happening here. When you look at U.S. companies, if they're domiciled in the U.S., the court absolutely should have jurisdiction to stop them from doing human rights atrocities. Clarence Thomas, the one who gave the opinion, I don't know if you mentioned this, Frank, but he's one of the he's the only Black person on the Supreme Court right now. I remember, like, in college, as a political science major, I could not find one case where that man had ruled in support of anything that would be good for Black people. I mean, literally every single case that I would read where he was on the side of white supremacy. So we see who it is. You know, this is someone that's Black and white face who aligns himself with white power, and hey, he's been paid off well for it because he gets to be in the Supreme Court. But this shows us why we have to organize along with these lawsuits. I think that's, you know, the thing that the takeaway is for me, because although we might not have jurisdiction according to them inside of their courts to bring certain cases and bring certain charges, the people should know that the international courts or the domestic courts that supposedly will bring about justice refuse to do it. And if they refuse to do it, even by the United States Constitution, if this country, the government does not represent the people, we have a right to rebel. If your courts will not do right by you, if your courts will not bring about a just outcome for your atrocities, then you absolutely have a right to not respect those courts, in my opinion. So I think this really is something that should raise us in organizations to know how to combat these types of rulings, and make sure that we're organizing the people to know, you know, these decisions are being made by you, by your government.
Absolutely. I think this is, you know, another point to make in regards to this, because sometimes we look at, you know, the parents and so forth that are involved in maybe sending their children to these countries to work and so forth. But I think it's important that we don't blame the victims of colonialism, you know, and imperialism at the end of the day. Like these are conditions where they're forced in. Sometimes, like, it's sending them, when they send their children there, you know, they don't even know the atrocities that's taking place in the countries that they're sending them as well, and how extreme this exploitation is taking place. But it's a matter of survival under these conditions. And so, you know, we definitely, you know, want to support the workers. And also, like, you know, we have to look at even our complicity in this when we're supporting these institutions. You know, we're quick to point fingers at the victims of colonialism over there, but we'll buy because, you know, chocolate is inexpensive or the clothes are inexpensive. We don't look at what's taking place, the exploitation that's taking place beyond that. And so our complicity, and we don't judge ourselves, and you know, and point to ourselves as being complicit in this. So, you know, I think it's important for us to just you know, analyze it in that way. But I know we spent a lot of time on this topic. Anybody, you want to say anything else, Frank, before we move on?
What I want to say here is about, and according to the report, about 70% of chocolate are produced in West Africa, and that 70% majority come to the United States. So here is the thing: the United States back her company. If 70% of chocolate is coming to the United States, I urge my African people and African leaders, we can hold the United States accountable by not exporting any cocoa to the United States. And we shall see where they will get our cocoa from. If we're producing 70% of the world cocoa, and that 70% is coming to the United States, and the United States do not want to be here responsible where she protect her company overseas whenever we want to come against them, and then they bring out colonial rules and law to protect their company or to protect the interests of the America, and these companies are paying taxes to the American government. We have the right to hold our cocoa and export it to other countries that we can gain from, because we're not getting anything at the end of the day. And those people working on those cocoa farms, they're not getting anything. They work 12 to 14 hours without no pay and beating, torture. Then why should we export our cocoa here 70%? We can export it to different countries and bring in different countries and make business with them. That's the bottom line.
And just like to briefly add on that, and that's going to take revolution, honestly, because unfortunately, like, the countries are ran by neo-colonial puppets who are willing to go with this agenda. So it's up to the people on the ground who are working to seize the plantations, seize them, and say, you know what, we're putting all this work into it. If we're going to work for nothing, clearly this system is not one that's going to bring about any livelihood for us, and that's what it's going to be. It's the onus of the people on the ground to seize these things. That's the only way it's going to reverse.
Yes. I'm glad we were able to discuss this topic. Very important. I think it's a microcosm of what's taking place throughout Africa and in the diaspora, this exploitation. Also, you know, we have an article on We Charge Colonialism's website that's dealing with the exploitation that's taking place in West Africa, the exploitation of the cocoa farmers in the Ivory Coast and Ghana. So please visit our website, wechargecolonialism.org. There's a plethora of articles that's dealing with all of these different topics that we bring to you. So we're going to move on to our next topic in our weekly roundup. Tierney?
All right, so we're taking it over to the United States. Some of you might have saw, I believe a couple weeks ago, there was a law, or rather the Biden administration decided to give what some people were kind of marketing as reparations to some Black farmers. And at that time it was just a proposal, but now it became a law that a lot of Black or African farmers in the United States were going to, well, that's how it was marketed, that they were going to be receiving $4 billion. Now, it should be noted that if you actually read the law, it says disenfranchised communities. So it doesn't necessarily have to be African people. It could be someone who's Hispanic, it could be someone who's Asian, or someone who's a poor white. But you know, we're used to these type of categorizations, even though it's marketed as being reparations for Black people. So yeah, this was done. Thank you. Excuse me. 1 second. Okay, so sorry. So this was done, and then recently a federal court actually blocked this law from going forth. A white farmer sued and said that he was disadvantaged because of the pandemic, and therefore this is discrimination. And now there's a national injunction on this law. So it should be noted that in the United States, 98% of farmland is owned by white people. If you could, it reminds me of something like we see all over the world. Obviously, it's more egregious whenever you see it on the African continent, where you have a population of Black people who are presently there, and 80% of the land is, I'm thinking about South Africa, obviously, 80% of the land is owned by a white minority that's only like 10% of the population. So we see this all over the world. It's just very interesting, though, that I think a lot of people had their hopes up, but once again, the American system, in my opinion, is not created for us, and it's going to always find ways, backdoor ways, to ensure that we are being kept at the bottom. So I think that this just brings up for our people what plausible outcome do you want to happen from this country, and that is showing you time and time again what it is. Do you believe that people are going to seize power and take control, who are going to do the right thing, or do you think our existence here is always going to be that of a second-class citizen?
Yeah, another this was brought to light. I didn't even know that this was taking place. That's why I love these conversations. And with this particular instance, first of all, you had this white guy, coming up. I guess he's talking about racism in reverse, right? But I think like this is why it's important to when it comes to any policy that is geared towards decreasing the wealth gap, or trying to overturn just like the economic disparities that exist within the United States. If it's not coined as reparations, white people are going to be able to say that they're being discriminated against. Like creating a policy that's just focusing on developing Black communities, Black people within this country is going to be looked at as racism in reverse and discrimination. So the only way that the United States of America can really like make amends or try to resolve the problems. And first of all, I'm saying all of this just because I'm all about us doing for self at the end of the day. But I'm speaking to white people right now. Like if they want to do something, they have to coin it as reparations to make amends for all of the laws that was passed, policies that was passed to marginalize us and keep us from rising as a people within this country. Because even, I think like even going back to even critical race theory, this is what critical race theory is bringing to light all of these laws and policies that kept Black people from being able to own land. Even if you go back to during Reconstruction, what is it? The farmers, what were they called? People that work the farm.
I know what you're talking about. I'm losing it.
Yeah, I don't know why it slipped my mind, but these people were working on Africans on these farms. It was like a condition of slavery where they worked this land, but they didn't own the tools. And at the end of the day, at the end of the year, they will find themselves in debt. But this was systematically was designed to keep African people dependent on these white plantation owners. And so, you know, I say all that to say, like, there's always been a system to keep us from rising. The only way that we can really, this country can make amends is by coining it as reparations. White people can't talk about reparations, say that they are owed that.
See, but just to add, I know Frank's gonna come in. I think the problem now is that we're having a conversation about reparations aside from a conversation of power. Like, to me, if you're getting reparations, but you're not getting any power with those reparations, or is the idea that the reparations will create power? Power is something that people seize. It's not something that your oppressor is going to give you. I think Assata Shakur said that no oppressor is going to willingly give you power. Mm-hmm. And I think that if our people were stopped going and begging, have a different mindset, we're not going to ask you, we're demanding these things. And we're going to create an organizational type demand to ensure that the pressure is not going to be let off, that it's not going to be a Democrats in office or Republicans in office. Like, it's going to take a certain level of boldness of our people to demand this. And I don't think we have that yet, at least for the people who are the main ones who are doing a lot of the work. As far as like this farmers bill, I mean, it seemed like very much something they've been trying to get done. But unfortunately, if you don't have a demand and a strategic way to ensure that you're going to do this or else, then you kind of fall to the whim, because it becomes a payoff. You know, they're trying to quell resistance, and so they'll give you something small that's not going to be significant. So I think we have to just strategize about power rather than just getting whatever type of compensation.
Hey, sharecroppers, that's what I was trying to say. But go ahead, Frank.
Yeah. That's the same thing I wanted to call it, sharecropper. But here's the thing, Tiani made a very, very good point. When we talk about reparation, we're not just talking about the financial aspect. And I know more people out there thinking about the financial aspect, because I can tell you, there are Black folks right now who are billionaires, but do they have power? No, they still being controlled. You see, so when we talk about reparation, even though we talking about the capital aspect, we want it. But we mean everything. We need everything that will empower us. And if empowering us means a threat to white supremacy, then so shall it be. But that's what we're talking about. White supremacy should just leave us alone. And when we talk about reparation, we're also talking about competing on a plain equal ground. We're not talking about reparation where we're going to infringe on white people's right, or we're going to make white people to look like a third world country that they created the name third world country, right? But that's not what we're talking about here. Black people, we don't care about what you people did, and we keep saying it. We are not here to pay debt. We are here like, look, listen, let us start from here, from this beginning, and go on, but just leave us alone. And reparation that you give to other people, you can give that to us too, and we go along and leave us alone. And by empowering ourselves, it don't really mean your life doesn't matter. Your life matters, and let us compete on a plain equal ground. So when we talk about reparation, it's not just money alone, because there are Black people who are billionaires, but they don't have power. That money can be taken from them at any time. We just saw one recently. I'm sorry to say it, but I'm going to call his name Bill Cosby. We just saw it when he was about to retire. What they did to him? Oh, okay, now we're about to get him. They got him with all his $1 billion, with all his $1 million. Where is he? And he's not a real person. Many Black people out there, the only way they can enjoy their $1 billion is to keep being puppet, with the white supremacy. That's the only way you're going to live, to die, and enjoy your $1 billion. But the moment you want to come out to empower Black folks, no way. That money is not for you. And that's what we're talking about as well.
And Kim, I don't know if you saw, but our sis Hillary asked the question: can reparations happen within a global capitalist system?
Ooh, I love that question. No, it cannot. And I actually was going to speak to what reparations will really look like, because you have to think about it. We have African people that are in this country that are looking at reparations as something that they should receive for slavery and Jim Crow and so forth. But as African people, we understand that our history goes before the the advent of chattel slavery in this country, we understood that there was a trade that took place, and we have to understand African people on the continent had land. Reparations and we were a sovereign people. We were a liberated people. So reparations without a nation of our own, reparations without land, is not really reparations at all. And any reparations that they're talking about, discussions that they're having, is some sort of, payout within this system where the ruling class, the dominant white ruling class, is still intact. And so at the end of the day, whatever resources that we receive, where is it going back? What banks is those resources going into? Like, what corporations are we going to be spending that money? And there'll probably be a bourgeois class and which we have to really be cautious of too, a bourgeois class that is trying to lead this fight for reparations right now, who's really going to benefit the most from reparations, and not the African working class. But I don't know if anybody else had any thoughts.
Yeah, I know we're so late with time, but yeah, I agree. I agree completely with what you said, and I would just add that it's not a lot to add. What you said, I think, was very to the point. Is that if you're talking about power, that's very different than being inside of a subservient position and asking for someone who's lording over you to do right by you. So I think we just have to think logically and historically. When has white supremacy ever relinquished power? And if we're not talking about power, again, I don't know why we're talking.
Indeed. So yeah, we're behind. We can go to this next topic. I think this next topic too is going to be a to be continued, because I still want to look at gain more information about what's happening in Ethiopia. But recently, Ethiopia, at least 50 people were killed in the Tigray region. So there was airstrikes that was Ethiopian Air Force. Ethiopian Air Force. There was an airstrike where over 400 people were injured, 50 people were killed. So I'm looking at this. This was in the town of Togaga, and this happened on Tuesday. So the reason why I said I want to, get more information about what's happening, because we know for the last several months we've been hearing about Eritrean forces that have been in Ethiopia, working with the Ethiopian army. It hasn't been declared, but from the investigation that's taking place, there seems to be some collaborative effort on the part of the Ethiopian army and the Eritrean forces, who are collaborating against the Tigray People's Liberation Front.
I think it's Tigray, yeah.
Tigray. So the Tigray People's Liberation Front. So part of, Tierney, you had sent me a video with some people in the Breakfast Club who was talking on behalf of what was happening in Ethiopia, but speaking sort of just like a pro-government group that was on the Breakfast Club. And I was listening to what they were saying, and some of the issues that I had was how they tried to label the Tigray People's Liberation Front as a terrorist group. Like the guy had said, yeah, the United States, Homeland Security had put them on said that there was a terrorist group. But when you look at that was the Tigray People's Liberation Front was labeled as a terrorist group for their actions between 1978 and 1990, before they even came into power. So and I know recently the Ethiopian government, I think in May, has labeled them a terrorist group. But I thought it was a little disingenuous to try to make it as if this is something recent, like the U.S. government has put them on a terrorist group. But I understand, but this isn't to take sides. I'm just trying to be objective in this. And also, I think the downplaying of what's happening to the civilians in the Tigray region. So I'm not sitting up here in support of the Tigray People's Liberation Front or anything like that, because I understand there's political tensions that's taking place, and you have the current. I know time is of essence right now, but I guess the point I'm making, I'm there's still a lot that we have to understand. But about this conflict. But I think like there is a struggle for power, and we have to understand too, like the current prime minister, he was a member of the regime, the Tigray regime when they were in power. And so there's a power struggle taking place. And, you know, we just have to learn more about what's happening, but we can't, I think, like downplay I feel like there is atrocities taking place. I feel like there is rape. Is it exaggerated? You know, possibly so, but I think like these things are taking place. And like months ago, I seen a video where there was an investigator in that region who saw Eritrean forces that had Ethiopian army gear on. So I don't know. What are your thoughts about it, though?
You know, I'm learning that I gotta like go back and research everything, because I've done some videos on this on my YouTube channel, and like since then I'm just learning more information. I'm like, okay, this is a region that I don't have as much familiarity with. I do have more familiarity with the issues going on inside of West Africa, or even parts of Southern Africa. East Africa is like a whole nother conundrum, is what I'm starting to learn. And so I'm taking more time to research. I do think I'm probably going to issue a correctional video on my prior thoughts, because it's kind of like we see where smoke, there's fire. So the one thing that was like definitely a red flag, the United States is sanctioning Ethiopia and Eritrea. The United States doesn't sanction everyone. They certainly don't sanction everyone for human rights violations. And so that lets me know that at least the Tigray people do have backing in the United States. That's just a given. They don't, if you look at the people who have committed human rights atrocities from Saudi Arabia to different parts of Africa, like going on in Togo, they're very selective on who they put sanctions against. And they only do it when they see an interest inside of their country. So that right there was a red flag. Also, there's been talks about the dam that they're building in Ethiopia. The fact that all of a sudden the United States wants to jump in on the side of Egypt because essentially Ethiopia is claiming ownership of the dam. That's another red flag. There's talks of the United States meeting with Kenyatta over in Kenya about intervening inside of the conflict through AFRICOM, because we know that Kenya is one of the big sponsors of the United States. That's another red flag. All signs to me are pointing to that this is the United States trying to enforce regime change. And there is a history, I think, of Eritrea being one of the only sovereign countries inside of Africa. They do not accept, they're the only country in Africa that does not accept $1 of US aid. They told US aid, you have to go. We're not going to accept anything from you. So I think there's an agenda. And, you know, seeing what's happened in the past, whether it was Gaddafi, seeing what's happened to Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe still is not recovering from the sanctions. I'm learning more, and I'm probably going to do a video later on once I feel more comfortable. But there was also a report, I'll send it your way, Ikemba, that break down a lot. It's a long report. I haven't finished it myself. But from the Eritrean government giving their perspective. So it's a lot going on.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm learning a lot now as well. I think like whatever contradictions that exist, though, we don't want these colonial US forces, European forces, or any other forces outside the continent to come in there and sort of dictate with sanctions or anything else that's happening. And at the end of the day, I think like, you know, the Tigray People's Liberation Front, they have to sit at the table. You know, I think like they're part of the reason why there has been this escalation. Despite the atrocities that took place, but at the same time, like the Ethiopian government has to, they have to exercise some restraint, due to the military power that they have and so forth. Because the last thing we want is civilians to be, become victims of this political tension that exists between the ruling class on both sides. But yeah, I don't know, Frank, you want to have something to say? I know we
got time. Let me just use 1 minute. The point I want to make here is the issue here is under no circumstances we trust these European or Western world. When Africa was gaining independence in the 60s, all leaders that was at the forefront, majority of them was assassinated by the Western world, and they saw them as a threat to their establishment. If they can do that in this current time, any nation that sees to disengage with the interests of the imperialists, you will be a threat. And this is how they will bring sanctions against you. And Tiani gave a very good example of Zimbabwe. When Robert Mugabe was alive, they make it seem that Mugabe was the boogeyman, Mugabe was the terrorist, Mugabe was the barman, Mugabe was the problem that holds Zimbabwe down. Mugabe was the problem that Zimbabwe was not progressing. Zimbabwe was going nowhere. That Zimbabwe was one time the breadwinner of Africa, but Mugabe was the problem that today Zimbabwe is not a breadwinner. But the question here is, today Robert Mugabe is gone. He's being buried and he's rotting. Why sanction is still on Zimbabwe, America? That's a big question. Robert Mugabe is no longer alive. You said Robert Mugabe was the problem to Zimbabwe. Why today sanction is still on Zimbabwe? It is a clear indication that as long their interest is not being protected, as long they are now in full control of your country, you are still a threat. You will not get peace. So it is a clear indication that Mugabe was not a problem to Zimbabwe, but rather the United States and her ally was a problem to Zimbabwe and to Africa at large.
Indeed, indeed. Hands off Africa. We're going to continue. It was, these conversations, man, I swear. But, we're going to go into the read. We're on page 421, and we're reading Black Women's Manifesto and the Black Radical Tradition. There should be a link in the chat for you guys to be able to access the reading. I want to encourage everybody, go to wechargecolonialism.org as well. Learn more about our organization, and email us at info@wechargecolonialism.org and find out how you can become a member of We Charge Colonialism today. We all know strength is in numbers, so join us in this struggle to liberate our people. So I'm going to begin. All right. So in attempting to analyze the situation of the Black woman in America.
All right. Sorry to interrupt. I think I missed the page number.
421. All right. So in attempting to analyze the situation of the Black woman in America, one crashes abruptly into a solid wall of grave misconceptions, outright distortions of fact, and defensive attitudes on the part of many. The system of capitalism and its afterbirth racism under which we all live has attempted by many devious ways and means to destroy the humanity of all people, and particularly the humanity of Black people. This has meant an outrageous assault on every Black man, woman, and child who reside in the United States. In keeping with its goal of destroying the Black race's will to resist its subjugation, capitalism found it necessary to create a situation where the Black man found it impossible to find meaningful or productive employment. More often than not, he couldn't find work of any kind, and the Black woman likewise was manipulated by the system, economically exploited, and physically assaulted. She can often find work in the white man's kitchen, however, and sometimes became the sole breadwinner of the family. This predicament has led to many psychological problems on the part of both men and women, and has contributed to the turmoil that we find in the Black family structure. Unfortunately, neither the Black man nor the Black woman understood the true nature of the forces working upon them. Many Black women tended to accept the capitalist evaluation of manhood and womanhood, and believe, in fact, that Black men were shiftless and lazy. Otherwise, they would get a job and support their families as they ought to. Personal relationships between Black men and women were thus torn asunder is a censor. And one result has been the separation of man from wife, mother, from child, etc. America has defined the rules to which each individual should subscribe. It has defined manhood in terms of its own interests and femininity likewise. Therefore, an individual who has a good job, makes a lot of money, and drives a Cadillac is a real man. And conversely, an individual who is lacking in these qualities is less of a man. The advertising media in this country continuously informs the American male of his need for indispensable signs of his virility, the brand of his virility, the brand of cigarettes that cowboys prefer, the whiskey that has a masculine tang, or the label of the jockstrap that athletes wear. The ideal model that is projected for a woman is to be surrounded by hypocritical homage and estranged from all real work, spending idle hours primping and preening, obsessed with conspicuous consumption and limiting life's functions to simply a sex role. We unqualitatively reject these respective models. A woman who stays at home caring for children and the house often leads an extremely sterile existence. She must lead her entire life as a satellite to her mate. He goes out into society and brings back a little piece of the world for her. His interests and his understanding of the world become her own, and she cannot develop herself as an individual, having been reduced to only a biological function. This kind of woman leads a parasitic existence that can aptly be described as legalized prostitution. Furthermore, it is idle dreaming to think of Black women simply caring for their homes and children like the middle-class white model. Most Black women have to work to help house, feed, and clothe their families. Black women make up a substantial percentage of the Black working force, and this is true for the poorest Black family as well as the so-called middle-class family. It's interesting that this was written in 1969 because we be having discussions like this now as if it's like new. Like women just started going out into the workforce, like, and becoming, independent. So I thought that was interesting. But anybody want to say anything before we move on?
I think a big takeaway that I'm getting from this passage, I think we don't even explore how much the capitalist system has controlled our thoughts to where we can't think outside of what it has been shown to us. Because I think it was very powerful when she talks about the images that Black men and women were told to measure up to. So women, we would have to overindulge and have these things, these luxury things, and then the man, like, he's depicted as this macho, that like the cowboys have said. And some of us, we don't even question, like, is this or who our people really are, or is this what has been implanted into us to limit our imagination of what African manhood and womanhood could be? And so I think, Kwame Ture said, when capitalism doesn't lie, some of the time it lies all the time. I think our people, we have to deeply look inside of the values that have been transmitted to us because of the system and be willing to deconstruct them and place them ideals that are more for our liberation.
Yeah. I don't know, Frank, was you about to say something? I just quickly add, but go ahead.
Yeah, let me just add, because I know we're running out of time. Let me just add quick. What I got from this chapter is we are always, as African, we are always defeated whenever we accept the narrative of the white supremacy, the narrative of Europe, the narrative of the Western world when it comes to our story. Once we accept their narrative, we become defeated. That's what I got from this reading. And if we are to be victorious, we have to come out with our own narrative, of our own story. And we have to read from books like this. We have to read from books that tell us the truth of ourselves, and start reading from books that don't tell or says any good narrative of us, but rather to divide us and make us look inferior and make us look at ourselves as if to say we were never when they saw us. The reality here is, even for a common example in Africa, even up to today, it's still there. Men make the farm, branch, cut down the tree, burn the farm, and clean the farm, and the women goes and plot the rice. So women have their part in society to play when it comes to gathering, or when it comes to making food, or when it comes to making farm, when it comes to these things. So women have their part in society to play equally as the men have their part as well to play. So women, men of African, we were dominant before we knew our story, before the white lies came. So why it is, if we want to get the true story, we can't go back and read books like what we're doing here. That's the only way. But as long as we keep accepting the narrative of the white man, so to speak, we will always be defeated.
Indeed, indeed. I'm gonna go, continue on. But I think like this does give us some great context. But Black women were never afforded any such phony luxuries. Though we have been browbeaten with this white image, the reality of the degrading and dehumanizing jobs that were relegated to us quickly dissipated this mirage of womanhood. The following excerpts from a speech that Sojourner Truth made at a women's rights convention in the 19th century shows us how misleading and incomplete a life this model represents for us. Well, children, while there is so much racket, there must be something out o' kilter. So y'all bear with me here. I think that twixt the niggers of the South and the women of the North, I'm going to read it as if it's today. The women of the North all are talking about rights. The white man will be in a fix pretty soon. But what's all this here talking about? The man, that man over there say that women needs to be helped into carriages and lifted what's that, over ditches, and to have to over ditches and have the best place everywhere. Nobody ever helped me into carriages or over mud puddles or give me any best places. And aren't I a woman? Look at me, look at my arm. I have plowed and planted and gathered into barns, and no man could head me. And aren't I a woman? I could work as much as a man when I could get it, and bear the lash as well. And aren't I a woman? I have borne 5 children, and I seen in most all sold off into slavery. And when I cried out with a mother's grief, none but Jesus heard. And aren't I a woman? Unfortunately, there seems to be some confusion in the movement today as to who has been oppressing whom. Since the advent of Black power, the Black male has exerted a more prominent leadership role in our struggle for justice in this country. He sees the system for what it really is for the most part, but where he rejects its values and mores on many issues when it comes to women, he seems to take his guidelines from the page of the Ladies' Home Journal. All right. So we got a few minutes. Did anybody, before we close out, had any thoughts? Because I know press. Or let me. I
didn't hear a lot of it because I'm chasing after this little boy. I'm sorry.
So I'm gonna read this last paragraph. We're gonna come back next week though and dig deeper into this. But I'm gonna do one more paragraph and then we can open it up before we close out. So certain Black men are maintaining that they have been castrated by society, but that Black women somehow escaped this persecution and even contributed to this emasculation. Let me stay here and now that the Black woman in America can justly be described as a slave of a slave. By reducing the Black man in America to such abject oppression, the Black woman had no protector and was used, and is still being used in some cases, as the scapegoat for the evils that this horrendous system has perpetrated on Black men. Her physical image has been maliciously maligned. She has been sexually molested and abused by the white colonizer. She has suffered the worst kind of economic exploitation, having been forced to serve as the white woman's maid and wet nurse for white offspring, while her own children were more often than not starving and neglected. It is the death of degradation to be socially manipulated, physically raped, used to undermine your own household and to be powerless to reverse this syndrome. But I think is, right here, the author is raising some very great points. And I think understanding of colonialism and capitalism, and understanding like the closeness, I think, to whiteness and even the white male allows you a semblance of privilege within this society that Black women don't necessarily have because of the image of the role, historically of what a woman is in this society. If you go back to the 19th century, they had something called the a Declaration of Virtues, where white women, like the white woman, to be like the white woman was described as pure, domestic, and meaning like, she wasn't promiscuous or anything like that, submissive. Like these were things, it was like these 4 virtues that the white woman had. And so, the Black woman was supposed to model these images of being domestic, being submissive. And when she's not, then she's looked down upon. When she wants to be, independent, she's looked down upon. I'm just using these terms too, like independent, but I think like the point too is understanding in capitalism, with the man being able to control the economy in the system, the white man, and then the Black man trying to, we had the miseducated Black man trying to take the reins of capitalism, replace the white man as sort of like the replace the white man as far as like the being the power, the central power within the household. Then the African woman becomes dependent upon the quote unquote breadwinner, because she's not able to be involved in the production of in the process of production within the economy. If that makes sense. I know I'm rambling.
It does, because you're essentially saying, I hear this with a lot of groups who advocate things like, we're just all equally oppressed. But you see a lot of like groups that try to compare themselves to Black people. It's not that they're
yeah, tell him 3 more minutes.
I know he's acting up today. I don't know why. But you hear a lot of these people, they're not trying to do away with the system. They're just trying to basically integrate into the system and be in the place where the white man is. So we have to keep these in mind whenever we're hearing different groups say, oh, we're also oppressed, or oh, we also, want to, fight for justice. Are you fighting to destroy the system? Or are you fighting to become the system? That's the question we have to ask.
Yeah, because I think, another point too is like where you have this push to have the Black woman sort of take the place of like they're looking at the white male as the model. I feel like that's happening in this push for like the independent Black woman and so forth, and this assault on the Black family is now taking place. So it's like it's not for the Black man or the Black woman to look at the white male as the model of what we should strive for. And I think like that's what's happening within this patriarchal system. Like we're all being affected by it. But Frank, did you have any last thought? You chilling?
You're muted.
Nothing very much. So we already out of time. So yeah, we close it up.
I do want to just do an announcement real quick though. So on this Monday, we're going to WCC will be announcing our radical repatriation program and platform, so you guys can check us out on our channel. And then following that, Frank will be leading some groups for people who plan to repatriate to Africa and make a change when they're doing that. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah.
All right, and make sure that you tune back in. We're going to finish this reading an analysis of this chapter in the Black Radical Tradition. We're back here next Saturday at 10 a.m. But hopefully many of you I want to appreciate everybody too that's continuing to view this podcast and book club. But I'm hoping that many of you become members before next Saturday as well. So make sure that you email us at info@wechargecolonialism.org. Find out how to get involved with the podcast, get involved with public relations, get involved with, membership, the political action. Hey, Frank, I know you organize events. Frank's looking for people to get involved in that, to organize some of these events. Find out how you can get involved by emailing us. And until next time, I just want to say peace and continue to struggle against colonialism wherever it is.